and gentlemen, welcome back to another Anthem video with Thales, Moustache, and today gonna show you guys the best storm builds for soloing Grandmaster 3. So basically during this week I was performing some luck tests on Grandmaster 3 on solo, and now I'm gonna show you guys the builds that I was using for those tests. So let's start with the build with 0% luck. Here in the Blasto slot we're using the Pounder Infinity, which is an upgraded lightning strike, and its special effect is while hovering, electric damage is increased by 60%. Here you can see the only good roll that we got here is plus 175% gear damage, which is not the best you can get, especially if you have a legendary version of this one. I'm still looking for one of those. Now for the focus seal slot we're using the Seal of the Open Mind, which is an upgraded shock burst, and it has a special effect that hitting an enemy from above refills a charge, and it can occur once every 5 seconds, which is crucial for our rotation. Now we do have a very good inscription in this one, which is plus 200% charges. So instead of one shot, we got 3 shots of the Seal of the Open Mind, which let us use this over and over again. So if you're trying to make a similar build, make sure you try to look for a Seal of the Open Mind that has this inscription right here, gear plus X charges. And it needs to be plus 100% or more in order to work properly. Okay, so now for the weapons, here we're using the Elemental Rage, but we're only using this weapon because actually this one gives us plus 105 maximum shield, and it gives us also plus 17% R1 speed, which is pretty good as well. And here on the second weapon slot we're using the Radiant Fortress, which has a special effect that hitting 8 shots in a single burst recharges shields by 35%. Now this is going to be really handy on Grandmaster 3 because whenever enemies break your shield, you can just start spamming shots with this shotgun right here and you will gain back your shield all over again. So that's very helpful. And in addition to all of this, this one gives us plus 110 maximum shield, which is awesome, alongside with the plus 15% gear damage. So just those two weapons together, we got here plus 215% maximum shield. So just to keep things clear here, maximum shield is one of the most important inscriptions that you might be looking for if you're trying to do Grandmaster 3 on solo, because actually your armor veil does not matter that much for the storm. Pretty much all of the enemies will be able to break through your shield and one-shot you. It doesn't matter the amount of armor that you actually have. So make sure you stack as much shield as you can, because that's what's going to save your life there. Okay, so now here for the first component we're using the Mark of Wrath, which increases gear damage by 50% and lowers gear recharge rate by minus 20%. And it has a special effect that while R1 recharges, L1 damage increases by 50% for 5 seconds. That means that whenever your Seal of the Open Mind is recharging, your Pounder Infinity will be buffed by 50% damage for 5 seconds, which is pretty good. Now for the second component here we're using Gunslinger's Mark, which increases gear recharge rate by 50% and lowers gear damage by 20%. That's a pretty good component to use alongside with the Mark of Wrath, because both together will increase your gear recharge rate by 30% and your gear damage by 30%, so it's a must-have. Now the special effect right here, I don't really think that's working. I didn't notice any damage increase on weak points, but I don't know, we need some confirmation on that, but I'm not using this for the special effect, just for the regular effect. Now for the third component we're using the Token of Daring, which increases elemental damage by 35% and decreases physical damage by minus 35%. And it has a special effect that a shield break increases shield damage by 20% for 20 seconds. This shield break right here is when enemies break your shield, which is gonna be happening very often in Grandmaster 3, so that's pretty good to keep your shield damage buffed by 20%. But it's not always good to have your shield broken, but whenever it happens, you're at least gonna get a damage buff. Now for the fourth component we're using the Token of the Master, which increases blast damage by 35%, and it has a special effect that hitting an enemy with an R1 increases L1 damage by 60% for 5 seconds. So whenever you manage to hit an enemy with your Seal of the Open Mind, your Pounder Infinity gonna receive a 60% damage buff for 5 seconds, which is pretty good. Also note the inscriptions right here, we got a total of plus 58% thruster life, which is really helpful for the storm because you're gonna be hovering like 99% of the time, so that comes really handy. Now for the fifth component, we're using a Mark of Ruin, which increases fire damage by X% and fire effect by X%. Now we're not using this one for the fire buffs, but instead we're using this because of this special effect that while L1 recharges, R1 damage increases by 40% for 20 seconds. So whenever you use your Ponder Infinity, which has a quite large cooldown, your Seal of the Open Mind gonna be increased and gonna receive above of 40% damage for 20 seconds, which is pretty good. Now for the last component, we're using a token of the Popel, which increases the number of combo chains by 2, but we're using this one also because of the special effect, which is hitting an enemy with an L1 increases R1 damage by 60% for 5 seconds. So whenever you manage to hit an enemy with your Ponder Infinity, your Seal of the Open Mind gonna receive an additional 60% damage buff for 5 seconds, which is also pretty good. And now for the last piece, the support seal, here we're using the Wind Wall, which has which creates a barrier that will last for basically one shot on Grandmaster 3. Yeah, I know that I actually buffed this a little bit, but still it's not lasting too long on Grandmaster 3. But we're using this one because it has plus 50% maximum shield, which is one of the most important inscriptions that we can have for Grandmaster 3. So that's pretty much it for the 0% luck build, which is also the electric build. Now I'm gonna show you guys the other build that I was using for those tests. Okay guys, so now let me show you the second build, which is the build that I used for the 90% luck test. So let's talk about the Blast slot first. Here we're using the Winter's Wrath, which is an upgraded version of the Ice Storm. And this one got a special effect that defeating an enemy from above refuses charges, and it can occur once every 10 seconds. Now the best rolls that we got here are plus 35% luck and plus 28% gear damage for the javelin. So this is going to increase the damage for both the Blast Seal slot and the Focus Seal slot. And also the plus 35% gear charges will increase the charges from 3 charges to 4 charges. So that's very helpful as well. Now talking about Focus Seal slot, here we're using the 10,000 Suns, which is an upgraded version of the Burning Orb. And this one got a special effect called Striker's Wrath, where after hitting an enemy, you gain 5% increased damage for 5 seconds, and this stacks up to 20 times for a maximum of 100% more damage. Now the best inscriptions that we got here are the plus 28% gear damage for the javelin, so this is going to increase both the damage for the Winter's Wrath and the 10,000 Suns. And we got also plus 35% charges for the gear, so instead of 5 shots we got 6 shots with this one. Those are not the best rolls you can get for the 10,000 Suns, of course, but that's the best 10,000 Suns in terms of damage output that I got so far, which is pretty bad, but okay. Now talking about weapons. Here for the first weapon slot we're using the Cycle of Pain, and I'm only using this weapon because this one gives me plus 105% maximum shield, which is one of the most important inscriptions for Grandmaster 3 for the Storm, and also increases the ultimate's damage by 10%. And as we're only going to use our ultimates in order to kill the stronger mobs like Furies, Titans, Ursics and things like that, 10% bonus damage for the ultimate is a lot of damage, so that's pretty good. Now for the second weapon we're using the Radiant Fortress again, which has a special effect that hitting 8 shots in a single burst recharges shields by 35%. This is going to save you so many times in Grandmaster 3 you have no idea. So whenever a mob breaks your shield, you can actually start spamming shots with this shotgun right here, and you will gain your shield back over again. So that's pretty good. Now this one also increases our maximum shield by 110% and increases our gear damage for the javelin by 15%. So this is both increasing our survivability and our damage output, so it couldn't be better. Now both those weapons together are giving us a maximum of plus 215% maximum shield. So that makes us really tanky for Grandmaster 3. You should focus on shield instead of armor all the way for the Storm, and you're gonna notice the difference as soon as you try. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about the components. Here for the first component we're using the Mark of Wrath, which increases gear damage by 50% and lowers gear recharge rate by minus 20%. The special effect in this case will not be very helpful for Grandmaster 3, but that's still a buff for a very good component that you should use all times on your Storm. Here for the second component, we're using the Gunslinger's Mark, which increases gear recharge rate by 50% and lowers gear damage by minus 20%. The special effect of this one doesn't seem to be working, at least for my experience, but I'm not sure about that. Let me know your opinions in the comments below. But those two components together are very good because they will both increase your gear recharge rate and your gear damage by 30%, so it's a must-have. Now for the third component, we're using the Token of Daring, which increases elemental damage by 35% and decreases physical damage by minus 35%. And whenever enemies break your shield, you're gonna receive a shield damage buff of 20% for 20 seconds. And again, it's very common to have your shield broken on Grandmaster 3, so you're gonna receive this buff right here very often. So that's pretty good as well. Here for the fourth component, we're using the Token of the Master, which increases blast damage by 35%, and this is also applied to the damage of your 10,000 suns, so that's pretty good. Also, this one has a special effect that hitting an enemy with an R1 increases L1 damage by 60% for 5 seconds. So whenever you manage to hit an enemy with your 10,000 suns, your Winter's Wrath will receive a buff of 60% damage for 5 seconds, which is pretty good. Now for the fifth component, we're only using this component right here because of the plus 35% luck bonus, which is needed for 90% luck. That's what we were testing in this build right here. But if you want more damage output and what's better overall, I would suggest you guys to change the Vanguard's token right here for a Mark of Ruin. So whenever your L1 recharges, which is your Winter's Wrath, your 10,000 suns damage will be increased by 40% for 20 seconds, which is much better than the armor increase we're going to receive right here and the special effect. So just bear that in mind. And here for the last component, we're using the Token of the Pupil, which increases the number of combo chains by 2, and also hitting an enemy with an L1 increases R1 damage by 60% for 5 seconds. So whenever you manage to hit an enemy with your Winter's Wrath, which you're going to be doing very often because you need to freeze every single enemy whenever you can, your 10,000 suns damage is going to be increased by 60% for 5 seconds. So that's a must-have as well. And now for the last part here, the support seal, we're using the Wind Wall again, but we're only using this support seal here because it gives us plus 20% luck. And actually I had to craft about 180 Wind Walls in order to get one that increases support luck by 20% in order to reach exactly 90% luck. So yeah. I'm only using this for this buff, but if you actually have a Wind Wall that increases maximum shield by 50% or something like that, it's gonna be much better. So that's pretty much it, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you enjoyed the video, please don't forget to hit the like button and to subscribe for more Anthem videos like that. So thank you for watching, guys, and until the next episode, see you!